Hello, everybody out there in Panther Country. This is Tim Whitaker coming to you with Vodcast number 16. And my guest this morning is middle school science teacher and STEM teacher, and wrestling coach and behaviorist. But mostly we're going to talk about middle school STEM today. Brad Holzer. Welcome, Brad.
Also with Carson Hinsman and Katriana Strand, please come to the office.
I think we're done with announcements now.
All right. Welcome. Good morning.
How you doing?
Good. Let's start out with telling our viewers a little bit about your background, both your personal and professional background.
Well, background, born and raised in Hammond, so I've been here most of my life. I have been married since 2001 to my wife, Allie, and we have three boys, Taden, Teague, and Trennan, that all go to St. Croix Central here. Just built a house this summer in District. We were open enrolled before that. So being that I grew up here, it's, know a lot of teachers that I've taught with, know the community pretty well, obviously. And it's just great teaching in the community that I grew up in, I guess.
How many years have you been teaching here, Brad?
I got hired in 2001, so 16 years.
Okay.
15, I think.
And tell us a little bit about your professional background, your education.
Went to Winona State for my college. I got a BS in elementary education, and then an emphasis in middle school. After college, I got my first job in Durand. I was actually substitute teaching in Durand and Mondovi, and then got hired in Durand as a middle school language arts teacher, of all things. Coached wrestling down there, helped out with some football, and then was there for 3 years. And then in 2001, got hired up here and have been here ever since.
So why did you choose a career in education?
I think it stems a lot with the teachers around me that worked with me throughout my time here at St. Croix Central, mainly Lindy Johnson. He was my high school wrestling coach, biology teacher. Actually, I think I had him in 8th grade science also. Pete Newsbaum was a good mentor of mine. He was one of my wrestling coaches. And then Jim Ehlers also throughout high school with civics and different history classes I took. Just sort of drove me down that path. Sort of had a couple things on my plate when I graduated. It was either culinary arts, education, or going into Marines. And I think those three sort of steered me into the path that I had, and I'm really glad they did.
Those are three very different paths.
Yes.
So do you like to cook?
I do. I do a lot of the cooking at home. I cooked actually at the Copper Kettle, which one of our school board members, Scott DeGrosse, used to own. That's where I sort of honed my skills under his brother Kelly in the back of the kitchen there. And I thank them for that because, it's a field I almost went into and something I really like to do.
An odd combination of culinary arts and wrestling. Those two don't always align, do they?
Yeah, going through high school, the cutting weight while cooking was always a little bit tough, considering they had some pretty good food down there. So as long as we were busy, it was easy. I didn't have time to eat.
True. So you were in Durand 1 year, you said?
I taught there 1 year. I was actually there for 3 years. So I substituted in there, Mondovi 2 years. Was the head wrestling coach in Durand for 3 years. And that final year down there, I worked at the middle school as a language arts teacher.
So tell us about how you arrived at SCC and what that first year was like.
The first year was pretty hectic at the beginning. I actually was in Durand for 1 day of in-service and got the call that I had gotten the job up here. I let them know that if this job opened up, I would be probably taking it. So they were well aware of it ahead of time. But it was 1 day down there and then up here for the last 2 days of in-service. So sort of jumped in on the fly. I taught 7th grade social studies at the time. And it was a good fit for me. I got to work with Vicki Burgess and Mr. Grisham, Mike Grisham, who both of them I had as a student, and they were very good mentors and role models, classroom-wise, all that type of stuff. And they were two teachers that I looked up to sort of coming through school anyway, so it was nice to be able to sort of teach under them and learn some stuff. And it just ended up being a very good fit. Obviously, still here, and being home was nice too.
Yeah, definitely. So you started in social studies. Talk about your progression through the years and the different subjects you taught and different roles you had.
Yep. I started out in social studies. I believe I was there for 2 or 3 years, and the science position opened up in 6th grade. And I had an emphasis in science on my degree. And we just sort of thought it'd be an easier fit to find a social studies teacher maybe than finding a science teacher at the time. And I had no problem moving over. And in reality, it was I think as far as math, social studies, science, I have no problem teaching any of the three. So moving over was fine, and I've liked the fit here teaching 6th grade science the last probably 12 years that I've been here. We've had some curriculum changes, things like that, but just that hands-on aspect of science is fun. Getting the kids to come in and work with experiments, do the simple chemistry, things like that. It's sort of a change from the just sit in your chair and listen or sit in the chair and take notes. So I get the kids moving around. And besides the teaching aspect, doing some behavior studies, being on a lot of committees throughout my years here, it's been a full plate. Just say that.
Yeah. Yep, you're definitely involved in a lot of different activities. So talk about maybe some of the changes over the years in the middle school science curriculum and any changes that you want to highlight.
I think the biggest changes would be, I think when we started, you were trying to get through so much that you were sort of doing a mile wide and an inch deep. And we've sort of changed to let's narrow down and focus on the big picture and focus on the really large concepts that we want, and maybe go half a mile wide, but go half a mile deep. Get the kids more, go in depth to those topics so they really understand what's going on rather than just focusing on maybe vocabulary and focusing on test questions, but get them to understand concepts. It's probably the biggest change, and that's changed within our standards since I started. It's been a nice change, really.
You talked about science and being hands-on, obviously lab heavy, which is good. Obviously, kids certainly enjoy that. Do you have all the equipment that you need, or have we always been pretty good with our equipment from day one?
I think for the most part, our equipment is pretty good. As a science teacher, you always want more. That's just the way it is. If you could have equipment for every student, it would obviously be wonderful, but financially, it's understandable that you just can't do that with as expensive as some of the stuff is. For instance, one balance is $300 or $350 for a good balance. So the stuff we have, we take care of. We make sure the kids know how to use it, how to care for it. And, I would say that for the most part, we've gotten the stuff that we need to do our jobs. Like I said, you can always want more, but at the end of the day, it always comes down to money.
Right. So one of the areas of focus for this vodcast is going to be on STEM, since it is a new program in the middle school. And for viewers that don't know what STEM is an acronym for, it's science, technology, engineering, and math. And again, this is the first year that we've had it in the middle school. And Brad, you took on the challenge of creating the entire, curriculum. Part of the referendum was to build spaces for STEM. So Mr. Holzer has a couple of different classrooms that he uses, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But again, it's a brand new program. You took on that challenge. And could you talk a little bit about, the challenges associated with starting the program and kind of how that progression took place starting about a year ago? Yeah,
it was something that's definitely needed, that STEM program in schools, sometimes called STEAM. Sometimes they had art in there. It's just that different creative way of thinking that I think a lot of school classes or schools are lacking. I just started a new rotation with 8th graders, and we went through this yesterday of just talking about how in school, a lot of times you're sitting there and the teacher tells you what to do, how to do it. You have to do problems 5 through 12, and you have to do them this way. STEM is a little bit different in that they want the kids thinking creativity. It's more of a project-based, a lot of times type curriculum, and you don't always give the kids all of the rules and lay out all the groundwork for them. It makes them think, how am I going to get from point A to point B without being told how to do it? And when we set up the program, a lot of it was Mr. Wenzel at the high school sort of taking the lead as the head tech ed and STEM teacher over there. So over here, we ended up getting a shop area, which was the old maintenance area in the basement of the garage. We had a very large closet area, storage room that was converted into a classroom. So with those two areas, we now basically have a classroom and a working lab. Still sort of works in progress as the first year here. It's my second sort of building referendum here at Central, and in both cases, it was down to the wire getting stuff finished before kids got in that day. So we walked into the program, and this year the program has basically been, what can we do with the space provided to get these kids being as creative as possible? I think it's a program that's going to be ever changing over the next 5 years until we find the perfect curriculum for us, between us and the high school, to get that flow basically from 5th grade all the way to 12th grade to get them in the classes they want. So Mr. Wenzel sort of gave me an outline of what he'd like to see at each grade from 5th grade to 8th grade. And I sort of took it from there. And 5th grade, we started off with some simple coding on the computers. They used Chromebooks, and that was about the first quarter and a half. And we moved on into simple measurement, talking about scale drawings. In doing scale, right now we were looking at the Taj Dubai, which is the tallest building in the world. Talked about the engineering feats that had to be overcome to build a tall building. And then we're going to move on into building paper skyscrapers and looking at the scale difference between what we build and what the actual building is. 6th grade, we've been working on a AutoCAD program online. It's actually called Tinkercad. So AutoCAD is 3D design, and it starts out pretty basic, but once the kids get the grasp of manipulating the shapes and combining shapes and cutting shapes out, they can build some pretty neat stuff. We've had kids building replicas of spaceships from Star Wars to little penguins with top hats. And the thought process is, once they get those built and we get our 3D printers up and running, they can build designs and use 3D printers to print out the designs. So really the possibilities there are endless. So technology-wise, the 3D printers that we got, we'll be starting to incorporate. We just got those in. We're getting those set up, and myself getting trained on how to use them, being that it's brand new to me. So eventually in the curriculum, they'll be using those, which I think is absolutely awesome. There's not probably too many middle schools that have 3D printers that the kids will have the ability to use. 7th grade, we've been working on Rube Goldberg machines, which is basically a chain reaction machine to do a very simple project. The kids get frustrated right away because, once again, there's not a whole lot of do steps A, B, C, D, and it's going to work for you. It's a lot of trial and error and drawing plans. A lot of them are doing simple things like toothpaste out of a toothpaste tube onto a toothbrush, but you got to have 6 steps to do it in. So once you start a ball rolling, it creates a chain reaction. You got to get the toothpaste out onto the toothbrush. And they seem to have fun with it once they really get into it and realize, you know what, I got to have some good plans. You just can't bring stuff together and throw it together. We talk a lot about planning, making changes on the fly, and just being flexible, really.
And patience.
Yeah, patience too.
Which is very hard for kids.
Yes. It didn't work the first time, so I'm going to give up. But a lot of them start to get that concept. And then in 8th grade, we've been building balsa wood bridges with a goal of maximum displacement per weight of their bridge. So basically, you want the lightest bridge that's going to hold the most amount of weight. And we talk about bridge design, talk about the different truss systems, and they then actually draw blueprints on their own on grid paper. They build their balsa bridges out of its balsa wood that I believe is a 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch square. And they do all the cutting, all the gluing, get the bridges built up, and then we test them on a table that's got a hole cut out of it, hang a bucket off the center in the middle, and basically add weight until they break and see who has the largest displacement. So they do a pretty good job at that once they get going and realize that, well, I'm actually building something, and they take a lot of pride in it, which is good to see. And obviously the funnest part is breaking them, so they get a big kick out of that when pieces flying all over the place when they get them destroyed. So that's sort of where we're set up. We sort of see a large change as we start getting our equipment in and obviously getting to know the equipment better. I foresee 7th grade going to CO2 cars where they're building. We actually have the shop downstairs with the woodworking materials that we have in now, so we'll be getting those set up in the near future. So I would say by next year we'll be, hopefully full running on these things, and I look forward to that. Basically giving a kid a block of wood and say, all right, you're building a car. Let's design it, and then we're going to use the tools to shape it, build it, see how aerodynamics work, and weight to speed ratio and all that type of stuff. So just trying to get some real world things into our curriculum, and talking to the kids that STEM is important. That there's some research and a lot of studies out there that about 20% of jobs in 15 years are going to be in the STEM field, and we don't know what the jobs are yet. That's sort of hard to impress on a kid that we're preparing for you for a job that we don't know what it is.
Right.
So it's sort of tough, but I sort of give them the analogy of in 1975, the year I was born, there weren't really home computers, but by 1990, a lot of people had home computers. There's a whole field that opened up because of that one thing. So that's sort of what we try to impress on them, and get the kids working with their hands and really just thinking creative, that creativity part of it.
Yep. No, that's a great example about the computers. And yeah, that's what we do in education, preparing our students for jobs that don't even exist yet. But you're preparing them like outstanding, first of all, just outstanding and very exciting stuff to hear the details of the program. But yeah, you have kids problem solving, number one, and exercising patience. Like you said, nowadays it's the instant gratification, or you just hit reset on your, and your video game, and you get a new life and you start over. But really, really good skills, I think, to be teaching our kids. And obviously, yeah, the science and technology and math and all those projects. And then obviously hands-on, which, 95% of the kids just love. So outstanding work. You talked a little bit about your vision for the program, one of those being the CO2 cars. A lot of it obviously is dependent on the equipment that you have. So I know when we started the year, you literally had nothing. They were putting together the tables even there in that area. So what you mentioned the 3D printers. We have 3 3D printers now that are about to get up and running, and we've got to get trained on. And of course, the best way to learn is just by doing and try it. What woodworking equipment, or what's next with equipment additions?
Yeah, so we have the 3 3D printers, which is pretty exciting. We have a laser engraver, which we had a guy come in and gave me a basic training. So once again, it's just getting hands-on and using it. I think the kids will get a kick out of that. So we can engrave on wood, basically on any pretty much hard surface material. So wood, metal, some types of plastics, things like that. We have a vinyl cutter. And then down in the shop area, we ended up purchasing, we've got a bandsaw, a couple table sanders, a miter box, drill press, and then some hand tools. And we'll be in the process of purchasing some more hand tools, like simple socket sets, hand sanders, just, basically some simple shop tools that in reality, I think every kid should know how to use.
Absolutely.
I was fortunate enough that between middle school, high school, working with my grandpa, working with my uncle who builds homes, stuff like that, I was introduced to those things. A lot of kids may not have those opportunities to get introduced to some of those tools. And that might be a job area that opens up for them in the future that, hey, I like working with my hands. I like working with wood, or, I like putting things together. I think you're almost getting that 180 degree turn in schooling that we're getting back to some of that we had in the 1970s, 1980s of that hands-on stuff, which really our society needs.
Exactly. Yeah, I just wrote my newspaper article yesterday about that, the vision stuff, and how sometimes, or I know the pendulum has swung so far to the side of, yeah, every kid has to go to a 4-year college, and now there's a huge lack of people going into the trades, which are very good jobs, but that's something that, again, it aligns with what we're doing. You're introducing kids to this in middle school, and then, our high school Fab Lab and STEM, and now we're looking at maybe some construction academies and other hands-on things where kids can learn the trades. And whether it's a career or not, it's a great skill for somebody to have. You mentioned, you just built a home with the district. How many thousands of dollars did you save by being able to do those things yourself, for example?
It is, luckily I got some good friends that are in the know, and sometimes I think we make things up on the fly that we think we know, but yeah, definitely my wife and I saved a ton of money by doing a lot of stuff ourselves. And it came from, really just me being able to work in the community, coming up through high school and in college, installing cabinets for Andy Rudisil, who put cabinets in out of Woodville. I roofed in the cities, paid my way through college, simple construction jobs. So yeah, definitely between flooring, roofing, siding, I can't really put a number, but it was thousands of dollars that I ended up saving simply because I knew how to do some of that stuff myself.
Exactly. I was very fortunate to have a father and grandfather that could weld or fix or build anything, and I still enjoy doing those projects with my dad, and still learning and trying to introduce my kids to that as well. And yeah, I through college, 2 summers, same thing. Worked in construction, and like I said, if nothing else, you can earn a little extra money in the summers, or to pay your way through college, or just do it yourself. So all great skills to have. Now, you mentioned the vinyl graphics cutter. My office, let me see, I don't know, I've got a bunch of quotes on my walls that were done with one in the high school. But yeah, that's another great tool and real life application that we're putting those quotes up in our boardroom and conference room. There's different, they use them to put little signs, no food or beverages in auditorium, on the doors there. They've put big vinyl graphics on the band room doors. I mean, there's all kinds of very neat applications for those as well.
Yep. Having the kids do that stuff and get them to learn how to do it rather than us paying somebody outside to come in and do that stuff for us, I think is a great, plus and positive that we have by having these machines. I think of the laser engraver, wrestling wise, we used to pay to have plaques made. Well, now we throw a piece of wood on there, we can do our own plaques, little stuff like that not only do, in the long run, might be saving the district a little money, but you're teaching kids how to do these things.
Right. Win-win.
Yeah, win-win.
Yep. So any other kind of what's next? What's your vision, next steps for the STEM program next year and beyond? So you want to share?
Yep. I think, just having 1 year under my belt, and the difference between a 5th grader and an 8th grader is so vast that making sure our curriculum is where it needs to be for the, not only educational, emotional, but developmental level for each grade. And then, getting that final vision of 5th through 8th grade with Mr. Wenzel. So we have a plan of not just, all right, let's just throw this in here because I want to, but put this in here because it fits in our grand plan of where we want the kids to be by the time they get to 9th grade. So things as simple as getting them ready to be able to read a tape measure so they can take an industrial arts class. That's something I think a lot of people take for granted, that people can read a tape measure. Well, in my times working on construction sites and even at home with different people, not everybody can read a tape measure.
Right. It's pretty important.
And, just getting all the equipment set up, learning how to use all the equipment, because, much of it's brand new for me. The shop materials are easy. I've used all those, but when it comes to the new higher tech stuff, it's going to be a learning process. As an example, with the AutoCAD, when I took drafting with Mr. Abear in high school, it was paper and pencil, and we had our T-square, and we had all that stuff. And being able to do it on AutoCAD is so much simpler. But learning how to do it takes, you're learning something brand new. So when we did the Tinkercad program with the 6th grade, that first class I was learning right along with them. I had my computer open. We were going step by step through it. And I think it was sort of neat for the kids to see too that I didn't know all the answers. I was learning right along with them. And I think they found that sort of enjoyable when one kid would say, hey, I found this tool that I could use to cut out this triangle. I would say, awesome, show me. They'd come over to my computer, they'd show me, and I could show the rest of the class. So that learning experience of, not just being the teacher, but being the facilitator, I think is something that education needs to look at too, that we can learn from our students too in some of these things. And I have no problem doing that.
Yep. So I always thought that you're done with school, you're done learning. So what you're saying is you never stop learning?
No, not really, especially as fast as this stuff is changing. You're constantly learning. So, having that program down now on I think this is the 3rd rotation of it. Have it pretty good, but, just getting in and seeing the neat stuff that you can do with it and having the kids excited for it. For instance, that program, the 6th graders come in. I don't have to tell them to open up their Chromebooks and get going. They open up and they get started right away. And it's a little different than, say, my 6th grade science class where I got to tell them to open up their book sometimes. They're excited to be in there and they're excited to get going because it's something new for them. And hopefully we can just keep the program fresh like that the kids want to be there and they want to learn and they're excited to use this equipment and learn the equipment.
Right. I like that we don't underestimate our kids. We challenge them, we raise the bar, and they rise up to meet those expectations. I mean, you're doing programming in 5th grade and you're doing, CAD CAM design work in 6th grade. You're doing engineering with the bridge building. I mean, it's amazing stuff. And, 10 years ago to say, hey, we're doing all that in middle school, people would be shocked. But happy to hear that, you said kids like to be challenged. And I like that we don't underestimate their abilities and push them. And then all the things you're doing and talked about, you're preparing them to be lifelong learners with problem solving. And you're right. I mean, I see that in my own kids sometimes. They're just like, well, just tell me the answer. It's like, no, it's frustrating, but it's for their own benefit, obviously, to learn how to learn and problem solve. So any final thoughts, Brad, before we wrap up this podcast?
I think it's exciting being at Central right now with all the changes that we've made with the STEM program, the auditorium, the future of like the things that you've sort of envisioned with Panther construction, production, those types of things. I think it's exciting times here. And I think as a parent of 3 kids here, I think it's exciting that we're trying to hit all avenues. I have 3 boys that if you could have 3 different sides do a coin, I would have 3 different sides do a coin with my 3 boys. And each one, I think, has an area that they're going to excel at here at Central. And I can't, being at 2 other schools in the past and talking to other teachers in different districts, I don't see a lot of that in some places. And I think we're trying to find the niche for each kid. What can they do? Is it the 4-year college? Is it going into trades? Is it, what is going to be best for you that you're going to be successful in life? And I think we're preparing our kids for that. I think, like I said, it's exciting times here.
Exactly. I certainly echo that. That's a perfect wrap to this podcast. So thank you. Great job. Keep up the great work. It's awesome stuff for our kids. Thank you, Brad.
Perfect. Thank you.